everyone, I'm Macy and I'm the artist and designer behind Mualcaina, a small business focused on kawaii merch. I'm assuming you're here because you want to design your own Ita bag, or at least are a little bit curious about the whole process. For context, I have launched 2 successful Ita bag Kickstarter campaigns, and I'm currently in the process of the second campaign. Disclaimer, this process is not cheap. I most definitely would not have been able to afford fulfilling either one if I didn't start a Kickstarter campaign. I'm going with the assumption that you already have an idea of the type of bag you want to design. First, design your Ita bag. It doesn't have to be fancy. I use Procreate to sketch it out and Illustrator to clean it up. If you know how to make a 3D model of it, whether that's using a software like Blender or even creating a paper model, it would be better, but it's not necessary. I mean, I didn't do that for my campaigns. Essentially, try to include as much detail as possible. You want the manufacturer to visualize and understand everything that you want in your bag, and never assume that they know what you're talking about or what you want. Whether that's including measurements, you can even include things that you don't want in a bag, such as you don't want a specific material to be used. For my mockup, I included screenshots of examples that I was trying to go for in terms of details, such as I wanted this handle to be really sturdy and about this length, or I wanted a strap like this, or I wanted my logo imprinted on the bag like this. Especially when you don't know the correct terminology used within manufacturing, this really helps your manufacturer rep to visualize what you want. For me specifically, I researched a lot of luxury bags because that was what I was going for. After you've sketched everything out, find a manufacturer on Alibaba. There are many ways to look for a manufacturer, but if it's your first time, and I'm assuming you don't have other artist friends who can refer you to a manufacturer voluntarily, I would go on Alibaba. If you're not familiar with this website, Alibaba is a marketplace in a way, not necessarily the factory itself. How I see it, it's kind of like how buying from Etsy isn't necessarily buying from Etsy itself, but you're purchasing from numerous smaller shops. I won't go too much into how I look for a manufacturer, however, I usually make sure that they're verified, have at least 5 or so years of manufacturing experience, and also have trade assurance. I would reach out to multiple factories. It's okay if you don't purchase from all of them. It's kind of like applying for a job. You apply to as many jobs as you can. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be interviewed for each one. When reaching out to these manufacturers, I would ask them these questions just to get an understanding of what they offer, and so you also have a better understanding of how much it will cost. Most often than not, these manufacturers are located in China, and while they do have understanding of English, I would recommend using simple English. Don't make your sentences too long, and don't use slang. And also just be kind and patient. There is a little bit of a cultural barrier, so if they are using the terms dear or sweetie with you, they're just trying to be friendly. They're not being condescending, like, don't worry about it. Once you've gotten a feel of which manufacturer you may want to work with, I highly recommend ordering a sample. It can be expensive, but it is definitely worth it because you don't want to go with one specific manufacturer, have them do all of the bags only for you to receive them and realize quality is just awful. While it ranges on how much a sample will cost, I believe for me, each bag sample cost about $100. While I do understand that samples can be expensive, especially if you are starting out, I do recommend going with 2 different manufacturers to order 2 different samples. And I say that so you can compare the 2 samples when you receive them. I have been in situations where I wanted to go with manufacturer A just based on communication and what they seem to offer, and then I had a backup manufacturer B, but when I did receive both samples, I realized that the quality is so much better with manufacturer B, so every single time I've always ordered at least 2 samples with every product just to see what I'm dealing with. I would also ask them if they can send you a fabric book when they ship out your sample. My manufacturer sent me one and I was able to see the different fabrics that they had available, which made it easier for me just because the photos that they send you will look slightly different than when you see it in person, just based on differences in screen temperature, whether that photo was taken under sunlight, fluorescent light, or even under shadow. So it really helps to to be able to see it in person. Now that you've sent in payment for your sample, it's time to actually make the sample. Typically, manufacturers will make a prototype using scrap fabric prior to finalizing the look. So don't worry if they're not using the actual colors that you wanted them to use. Once they send in those photos, I would be very clear about any changes that you want to make to that sample. I like to make my corrections on Procreate just because it's quicker for me, but a lot of people like to use Photoshop so they can adjust it so it will actually appear as how they want it to look. As excited as you are, do not rush this process. It's better to get it right the first time rather than just go along with it when you really don't like how it looks. You really won't hurt their feelings if you ask for changes because it's their job to make sure your vision becomes reality. Just be polite and of course have some basic manners when you're doing all of that. The prototype / sample process may take months. I know for me, my first bag took about 4 months until I was pretty happy with it. I am from the US and most factories, as mentioned previously, tend to be in China, so you're going to deal with issues with time zones. I know for me, I usually am able to communicate with them between 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. my time. Because I do value my sleep, I'm not gonna stay up late just to message my manufacturer rep. And sometimes because of these time issues, you might only be able to send 1 or 2 emails or messages at a time unless you're willing to stay up really late. Once you receive the samples from these different manufacturers, decide which one you want to go with. It could be based on cost, quality, the relationship that you had with the rep, how fast was production, how quick was shipping to you, how was it packaged. With this in mind, once you've chosen one of them, you can ask how much it may be if you were to order their MOQ and how much shipping is estimated to be when it's shipped to you. Once you've gone through getting your funding, whether through Kickstarter or pre-orders, now it is time to pay for mass production. As I mentioned before, it is an expensive process, which is why I do recommend doing pre-orders or a Kickstarter campaign when you are funding these Ita bags. I do have a video here on how to run a Kickstarter campaign. It is specific to pins, but it can be applied to creating an Ita bag campaign, so definitely watch that if you're interested. And now you just wait for the bags to be manufactured. I know for me, it took about 5 months to produce and 1 month to ship to me overseas and go through customs. It is slightly longer just because at the time my manufacturer was dealing with COVID, so I know at one point they did have to shut down for I think a month. But just know it does take a long time. And finally, you get to receive the bags. It's a lot, especially when you live in a really small place like me. The boxes took over my entire house. It was very, very mentally draining, I'll have to say. If you were curious about my timeline for the classic Ita bag, I reached out to my manufacturer in July, essentially went through 2 different samples from 2 different manufacturers, chose one, and then went with another second sample with that particular manufacturer and finalized that one by October. Launched my Kickstarter campaign in early November till I believe end of November. Sent in my funding for production in December and then received my bags the first week of June. Hopefully with all of that information, you are still excited about manufacturing your Ita bags. I'm so excited for you. Please tag me whenever you launch your Ita bags. I'm very excited. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I do upload a lot of Artist Alley, small business and manufacturing videos. Again, if you are interested in learning how to launch a Kickstarter campaign for a new product, do watch this video and I'll see you in the next video.